Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we'll be a little under pressure for time, so I'll be very short. While we are talking on the subject before that, roughly 1 hour delay, and in our case, 3 minutes we roll out a car. So we are 20 cars short today because of BW. Maybe I think somewhere this time management becomes a bit of a challenge. When we look at our experience in Maruti, when we are looking at empowering young leaders, I think last 20 years, our need was about 50 leaders. We hired two from outside, one CFO and one legal head. Balance 48 came from the internal talent pipeline. I think somewhere the taste of the pudding is when you actually eat the pudding. What we do need, not lot of learning from Japan for sure, but lot of learning from our own Indian culture as well. And I'll talk very briefly about that. One small incident, Mr. Bhargav, who's the chairman of our board of directors, shared with me a few years back. He says that he was having a meeting of the department head level people, all DGM, very senior people, and DGM level people in Maruti will have very big reporting, maybe 200 people reporting to them, something like that. So he asked them in that meeting that last 6 months, if anyone you have made a mistake, would you raise your hand and share that? So I told Mr. Vargo, I'm sure nobody would have raised his hand. Culture point one somewhere 15, 20 years back. And perhaps when we look at the reversal, that you asked this question in our business review meetings, there'll be 4 or 5 people who will be very dead honest upfront and will have the guts and character to talk about what mistake they did, so that the other 25, 30 people should not replicate or get into that kind of mistake. That's the kind of culture, perhaps in my thinking, is most critical for us to look at. Perhaps when we are looking at a lot of discussions, including a fantastic presentation by Dr. Jayakumar, I'll be avoiding talking a lot of HR language in terms of empowering young leaders for tomorrow. But I think to a great extent what we have looked at, creating a bench strength always is going to be the spinal cord for any such talent pipeline for future. Perhaps when you look at bringing in people, in our case maybe 400 people every year, youngsters coming in, you'll have to provide them that eco environment where they can grow. And I'll give you one example. First focus came in from our chairman of Suzuki Motors Corporation, Mr. Osama Suzuki. And you will be surprised that when Indian government in 1981-82 was sourcing for partners for this car set up, this factory, they went to US and European car makers first. Then they went to Japan and they met Toyota and they met Honda, everybody. They last went to meet, after everybody refused, to meet the Suzuki group. And Mr. Suzuki was traveling from Tokyo to US, so that morning he said, okay, we'll meet at the airport for 1 hour. And he met the very senior delegation from Government of India at Tokyo airport in 1982, asked his people to get a whiteboard in which he explained how a car factory is made. And then he said, these are the kind of requirements, you just think about it. I'll be back in 4 days if you are interested. We will meet again at our factory head office at Hamamatsu. And then that meeting took place because our delegation, including Mr. Bhargav, Dr. Krishnamurthy, they waited there for 4 days in Tokyo for him to return from US, and then rest is history. But one thing comes out very clear message in our culture is that business focus is where the upbringing starts in Maruti. For leaders for tomorrow, perhaps that will be the first cardinal principle. And one simple example which I talk about is that a direction came for our young R&D and engineering and supply chain team that if you can reduce 1 gram weight of every component, every part that goes into the car, you can save 1 yen or 1 rupee. And many youngsters felt, what will happen if we save 1 rupee or 1 yen? But in a car, roughly 5,000 parts go in. So if we reduce 1 gram weight of every such part and we save that kind of 5,000 rupees for one car, we make 1.8 million, roughly 18 lakh cars at that point of time, now 2 million. So we save 900 crores recurring every year. That's the kind of business focus, detailing, tear down kind of thinking when we start the bench strength concept in Maruti. Young engineers, young B school guys, and even chartered accountants. Everybody goes through this 1 year structured kind of upbringing. Somewhere perhaps a kind of learning where Japan has taught us that a guy developing into a leadership profile must go through three functions, must go through three geographies, and must face adversity and adaptability before he or she becomes or assumes a significant role of a leadership level position in Maruti. Because unless we look at creating that discomfort, unless we look at this adaptability quotient, I think nothing will happen. We call it a job rotation policy. So a person joining in HR, retiring in HR is a very old, outdated story for Japan. Same thing finance, same thing engineering, same thing supply chain, marketing, sales, service, everything. Male, female, doesn't matter. That taboo we broke in 2003, that females cannot be working in a manufacturing sector, it's a belief. It's completely rubbish. So perhaps somewhere we look at creating this kind of perspective when we are looking at empowering the growth of young leaders in Maruti. Perhaps we are also looking at maybe a role where they can be part of critical projects in addition to their current responsibility. How much overload, whether Narayan Murthy 70 hours or 80 hours or 90 hours, with a purpose, with passion, with ownership, how much overload they can take. They are doing a production job or a supply chain job, but they are working on a new electric vehicle car product, which will be involving visits between Japan and India and that kind of stuff. Also, perhaps when we are looking at a kind of a principle which Dr. Ramcharan talked about few years back in our supply chain conference in Dubai, I remember, the principle, very famous principle he talked about, 98/2. By any chance, any of you have gone through that principle, that detail, Dr. Ramcharan, 98/2? Okay. The simple concept he talked about, 100 companies research, where he studied and he said that it is only 2% of people in every company which influence the behavior and performance of the balanced 98% people of that company. It is only 2% of the people in every company which influence the behavior and performance of the balanced 98% of the people of that company. And I was very fast calculating for Maruti sitting there in Dubai, and I could arrive at that he is 100% right. 2% people in our case, irrespective of designation levels and hierarchy, will be influencing most of the others into projects, into leadership roles, everywhere. And if we can broad base, and we have taken that project 7-8 years back, to 95/5, if 5% of our people can influence the behavior and performance of the balanced 95% of the people of Maruti, I think we'll be a very powerful company with internal talent pipeline for future. What we have achieved in 40 years, 2 million, we are going to double it in 7 years, 2030, to 4 million. 1 million for exports, 3 million for domestic market in India. India automobile market at that point of time is roughly going to be 6.1, 6.2 million. With 50% market share, we would like to be there at that point of time. I just retired this July at 65 because top management level 60 plus another 5 years, and perhaps there were some discussions that maybe continue more. I said no. My purpose is very clear, is that the next gen leaders, they should take care of Maruti next 10, 12, 15 years. If there is any specific strategic input required, perhaps at board level I will be still open, but not getting into the path of people who are going to replace us. When we talk of most critical 3 factors in my thinking, is talking about creating that kind of an eco-environment in which talent can take risk, talent can be trusted, and talent can fail. That's what Maruti is. There's nothing like downsizing, there's nothing like asking people to get off board and all that. That culture doesn't exist in our case. Second is, maybe look at young people to make mistakes, but experiment. Take risk. Give them budgets for failures, including new cars. And third, perhaps when we are looking at this top leadership role, we are looking at pushing the young people into limelight, not all the time CEO and MD and all of us standing on the dais, but bringing in young talent to take maybe a little bit of limelight and recognition. One such gentleman who was the first Japanese managing director of Maruti, Mr. Shinzo Nakanishi, was a great leadership model for us to look at. 2008, he took over after Mr. Khattar retired. And he was asking me for our new plant at Manesar that let us put some tree plantation kind of this thing so that dust goes down and all that stuff. I was very busy. We didn't get time for 2-3 months. Finally, we did plan a tree plantation exercise at Manesar. About 20,000 trees. So we reached there early, both of us. We were having a cup of tea. At that point of time, our civil factory people were telling us what kind of trees we are going to put. So ficus and this and that. And they also said mango trees. So I asked them how many years this tree will take, this small plant, for getting to the fruit level, mango level. So they said about 6 years. Naganishi was 63. 65 is our retirement age. So I told him, Naganishi-san, you will get nothing of what you are going to do, this labor today, but I will enjoy those mangoes in Manesar. I was just joking, lightly. But what he replied made me feel so embarrassed that day, so small. He said, Siddiqui-san, one responsibility of the top leadership like you and me is to create a healthy company, healthy Maruti, so that the next leadership team takes over a very good, healthy, well-performing company. That's Jim Collins level 5 kind of leadership thinking, building the institution, building the people for tomorrow. Not everything about me, myself. Big learning for me on that day, 2008, maybe March, April somewhere. And then rest, I changed my attitude of building Maruti, building our next gen leaders there. Not about me all the time. I have done well, fine. All that happens. One perspective, perhaps when we are instilling that kind of culture, and a lot of time we talk about a kind of a culture we advertise, but actual culture is different. That gap should be minimum in my thinking. That culture where in the board meetings, when we expose the youngsters, they can have an eco-environment to disagree with seniors. Very difficult. Disagree with the directors, disagree with the CEOs. I led that culture by spirit and by thinking for 20 years. So I had big arguments, big discussions in the board and big disagreements. But outside the board, whatever is the decision is fine. Perhaps that we try to inculcate back into our company. One small story before I finish this and then we get into this awards. Somewhere in the north, up on the hills, there was a saint who used to live with 1 or 2 disciples. And some people used to come to him for some help, some advice, some prayers. But slowly, he started becoming more famous and more people, more villagers, even cities, people started coming to him. And they share with him a personal problem, a business problem. What this saint will do will take out a book, flip some pages, and give a solution. And that solution will work like magic. So he became very famous, very short, quick time. And people started coming and waiting for the next 3 days, 4 days, 25 disciples managing this small ashram and everything. And those 25 disciples were thinking that if we get that book, there is no need for this apprenticeship, this long period of wait. We can become as famous and as wise as this saint. So they tried twice or thrice, but they couldn't lay their hands on that book whenever the saint was not in his cottage. But as life would have it, the saint finally became sick, old, and then he passed away one day. His funeral was a 2020 affair, just like 2020 cricket, and then they ran back into the cottage. That day, they found that book. And they were absolutely delighted that now we have got this treasured book which has got magical solutions. But to their horror, when they opened the book, it was all plain white sheets. Nothing written in there. Because all of us will have to write our own pages. Empowering leaders is fine, but it is a very tough ask when you get into a leadership role, big business, big company, 40,000 people, 100,000 people. And there, you'll have to take your own call. In my thinking, the character is very critical, what we have picked up from Japan. Modesty, simplicity, very strong character. First the country, then the community, then the corporate, then the family. And if still something is left, then me, myself. In our case, thinking is all the time reverse. Perhaps emerging leaders for tomorrow, I think great job we can do if we start building this good character which will help our country, which is at the moment poised for great economic growth in the next 10, 15 years. My very best wishes and thank you to the BW team for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.